What is up? Yeah, okay, Gremlin, cat.
Yeah.
My name is Max Currie, and I am the creator of Death Cassette Games.
Yeah.
In today's video, we're going to be going over some high-level architecture stuff, game mode,
Yeah.
player character,
Yeah.
player controller.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
alright guys, we are in UE, or Unreal Engine. We're in edition 5.3. I have already created this map just to get ready. This is a testing ground for building the side scroller mechanics that we're going to be working on today. So the first thing that we want to do is go ahead and open our content drawer. So I started this with the third person character blueprint, or the template that came with starter content. So we're going to navigate. I've already created this folder structure here that you see, but we're going to navigate down to third person. We're going to go into blueprint. So the first thing we're going to do is look for our BP, or blueprint third person character, and we are going to duplicate it. All right, we're going to rename that BP for blueprint, RM for Requiem-Mortem, dash SS for side scroll, and then underscore character. That's how you spell that, right? That's how you spell that, right? All right. Then what we're going to do is we're going to grab and drag that into our RMSS character folder here. And we're going to select move here, not copy, but move, because we don't want to get confused by multiple iterations later. Then we're going to go straight into our controller folder. We're going to right click, and we're going to look for create basic asset here, and we're going to select blueprint class. We're in the controller folder, so what we're going to make is our player controller. And we're going to name it the same way, BP underscore RM dash SS underscore controller. There we go. And then for our game mode, we're going to move to that folder, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Create basic asset, blueprint class, game mode base, and BP underscore RM dash SS underscore game mode. Perfect. Now that we've created all of that, what we want to do is we want to go into the game mode. What we're looking for over here in our details pane is our classes. So these are some specific attributes to the game mode that are going to give us the ability to edit and control certain things later as we develop the game. But the first thing that we're going to do is right here, we're going to set up our player controller class. It's set to the default player controller, but since we just made one, we're going to go ahead and select that as our default. And the same thing for our default pawn class. Right now it's set to the default pawn, but we just created one, so we're going to select that. We're going to hit compile and save. Awesome. All right. Let's just go ahead and close that crap. Now what we want to do is we're going to change our project settings. So when edit project settings, and then in the window, what we're going to look for is maps and modes. When we click on that, what you want to do here, I've already set it up, but what you want to do here is the default game mode. You want to select the new game mode that you've just created. Otherwise, it's going to be default to the blueprint for third person character, or third person game mode. And then here, I've already done this, but in the default maps, you can set up the editor for startup map or the game default map. And I've already set it up for what we created here for testing. So that's all we need to do here. The next thing we need to do is go into our world settings. So I've already got it open here, but if you want to open it, you can go to Window, and then down here about halfway, a little bit over halfway, you can click World Settings. So in the world settings here, we've got a game mode override right here under game mode. And you can select either the new game mode that you just created or none. If you select none, it will automatically go to the default, which we just set up in our game mode and our project settings. So we should be good, but I'm going to select it anyway. All right. Now what we want to do is open up our content drawer and navigate to our new character. We're going to open that up, and it's going to open up to the event graph. And because it's a side scroller, we don't necessarily need the camera input for a third person, so we're just going to go ahead and delete all of that. We're going to compile and save just in case anything bad happens. But now what we want to do is navigate to our viewport. So in the viewport, it's like a visualization of what we're working with. You can see the character, you can see the camera, and we've got a components grid over here that shows us all the components that are tied to this blueprint. So the first thing we want to do is we want to select our camera boom. So we're setting up our camera now based off of our character movement. So it's called camera boom. The actual component is called spring arm, but in the template for third person, it's renamed camera boom. So that's what you're looking for. Camera boom. Now we removed all of the camera settings that we had before. Because we don't need to control it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to disable it for the camera. Down here in camera settings, we have all these. We have four. We have use pawn control rotation, and inherit pitch, inherit yaw, and inherit roll. Well, we don't want to control the camera, and these are inherit features. So they are going to be dictated 100% by the player character mesh and what we do with that. So we're going to remove all of this. And then the next thing that we want to do is we're going to want to rotate it, right? Like if we compile and save here and click play, we've got a camera that's stuck, right? Oh, we got a camera that's stuck. It's just following the character around, right? But we can't move it. We can move the character, but we can't move the camera. And we don't want that. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take our camera boom and we're going to go into rotation here, and on the Z we're going to rotate it -90 degrees. That's going to put it over here on the right hand side of the character. A lot of tutorials will tell you to do this step, and a little later we're going to go over a different way of doing it, but we're going to set it up this way for now. Before we move on, honestly, I really hate this length, so I typically put this at 800. It's double the length, but I also don't like that it's right there at the character's waist, so I set my rotation here at 5 degrees, and I just grab it and rotate up 1. And that's it. Compile and save. All right, so the other thing is here, now that we've done this, I can click play and you can see what we're looking at. So the movement is still available, but the camera is stuck to this right side. I like this length. The length is good. Our controls are a little inverted right now, but that's okay because we're going to fix it. But what I want you to notice is that the camera is very static, right? Like it just follows the character and stops and moves. It has no dynamic movement to it at all. So we're going to fix that. So what you want to do is go back into your player character blueprint, and then in your details pane, I want you to scroll down and look for lag. You want to enable the camera lag and then change the lag speed. Now, typically anything between 1 and 10 is good, but I like 5. A lot of people like 5. It's just a nice... 5 is just a really good... It's subtle, but lags enough to feel it. So like I'm moving now, and if I stop, there's like a little delay of it catching up, right? Like it follows the character, which I like, and then stop, and there's like a subtle movement forward, just adding a little bit of extra dynamic movement to it. The other thing that we need to do is, since we are building a side scroller here in Requiem-Mortem, the red line that you see, the camera boom between the camera and the player, right now the way that it's set up default out of the box is that, say for instance there was a column or a wall between the character and the camera. Whenever that thing, that wall, that column, that character, that box, whatever it is, interrupts or intersects with this line, what it's going to do is it's going to force the camera to zoom in, like change this distance so that there's nothing between the camera and the character. I don't want that. That's dumb. At least for a side scroller, that's dumb. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to camera collision up here in the details pane. We're going to turn off do collision test, and that's going to prevent that weird movement. We're going to compile and save that. Now what we want to do is start messing with the actual movement control. So we're going to go to the event graph. Now we've got movement input. There's a bunch of tutorials and videos out there about how the new input mapping system works for UE 5.3. I'm not going to go over that. I'm working on building the game, so this is part of the setup, and I just figured that this would be good for anybody else. There's tons of tutorials on the same thing, but so we're only going to be moving left to right because we're only going to be moving on the x-axis, which means we only need the A and the D key out of the WASD keys that are typically used for navigating and moving characters on a PC. Now, we don't need the forward and backward movement because those are dictated by the WS, and it's typically restrained to the Y-axis. So I'm going to want these later, but you don't need them. I'm going to want them later for different dynamic interactions with the environment, but right now I don't need them. You can either delete them or you can do what I'm doing where you hold Alt and click on the connecting plug and just disconnect it, right? Just disconnect it. And these things are called reroute pins or something else like that. I don't need them. I don't need these, so we're going to remove this. All right, okay. So we don't need any of that, so we're going to move this in because we want things nice and neat. But what you want to do is the action value X. You want to plug that into your scale value, and you want to set the world direction to 1. So it's +1, which means if you're moving forward, it's adding 1. If you're moving backwards, it's subtracting 1. We're going to compile, and we're going to save that. And let's just go ahead and play that, just so you guys can see. Okay, so here we go. Now I'm hitting W and S, and I'm not getting any kind of feedback or any kind of inclination of movement. Nothing. So now I'm moving right and left, and that is it. All right, so the next thing we want to do is we're going to go back to our viewport, and we're going to, you don't have to do it in the viewport, but I like it better. It's my safe zone. But you're going to select your character in the components, and you want to go to your details panel, and you want to go up into the search bar and look for planar. Now, what we're doing here is we're constraining the plane. So right now we've removed a bunch of the movement stuff, so now you can only move left and right on the x-axis. But that doesn't mean that your character cannot be moved along the y-axis. Say if there's something round in front of them, if there's a character, if there's anything that might push them either forward or backward away from the camera. So what we want to do is we want to constrain the plane, and we want to snap to the plane at start. Now we want to define the plane in plane constraint axis settings. So instead of custom, what we want to do is we want Y. If you look down here in the bottom left of the viewport, you can see a little tiny gizmo that defines the X and the Y, right? So if you look at the forward arrow of the character is moving along the X-axis. So what we want to prevent or constrain is movement along the Y, which in our actual gameplay is towards and away from the camera. So now there's nothing that can prevent it. It's going to be a little hard to show here, but say if I hadn't constrained that, running into this round object might push the character to run around it and into the front towards the camera, and we don't want that. So now that that's done, what you want to do is now you want to search the rotation, right? So rotation, that's not how you spell that. Anyway, rotation. There's this spot right here, character movement for rotation rate. Right now it's set to 500, that's out of the box. I'm going to increase that, but before I do that, I want to show you why. So here, if you're running in one direction and you turn the other way, it feels like it takes a little too long to rotate in the other direction. So I'm going to double it to 1,000. Okay. Compile and save. The other thing is that the jump feels a little slow and floaty, right? Just a little too much. So we're going to change that. So let's go here we're going to go into our details pane in the blueprint, and we're going to search jump Z. So the velocity here, it's set to 700, but we're actually going to lower it, and there's a reason why. Okay, so we lower that. I lowered it to, I'm going to change it to 400. How about that? So 400. Now what we want to do is we want to search hold. So jump max hold time. So the reason we're doing that, so the reason I lowered the jump Z to 400 instead of 700 that it was at, and now we're looking at the jump max hold time, is that what I want is I want the jump velocity to be set to a certain number, and I want the hold time to dictate any additions to that. So we're going to set it to 0.03. It's going to feel weird at first, okay? So first, now we jump, and it still feels a little too floaty, but now what we can do is if you tap it, you get a little jump, or you can mash and hold it, and you get the full size jump. This velocity still feels a little too much for me, but we're going to fix that here. So the next thing that we want to do is we want braking acceleration. So braking acceleration for falling. It's set to 1500 right now, and we're going to lower that to 500. So what this does is, in mid-air, if you are running and you press and hold, you get a full jump, and you keep moving forward. Now, if you're running and you jump, but you let off of the jump button, you kind of slow down. Or if you let off the directional, you sort of stop midair. So it removes your forward velocity when you're in the air. So it helps with controlling the player jump. Now, air control. This is something that's typically found in a lot of games. Right now it's set to 0.35. I'm going to put it at 1. All it does is give you a little bit more control mid-air while you're jumping. It gives you a little bit of turn. It's actually kind of cruel because here now what we can do is we can jump. We can do a full jump but change direction. Oh no! But it's just not quite enough to get back where you were going. It's kind of cruel, but it's typical for these games. So, next, remember how I changed all the velocity and all these things, and the jump still feels a little floaty. But now what we're going to do is we're going to mess with gravity. So gravity is enabled. It's at 1.75, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it to 2.25 and increase it by 50. And now what it does is it just means we fall a little bit faster. Not much, but a subtle amount enough to matter. So if I press and hold, I make it. If I tap it, it feels a little springier. If that's a word. Is that a word? I don't know. Anyway, now that we've got the gravity and the jump and everything, let's go back to that 90 degrees on our boom. So initially, I set our camera boom to negative 90 degrees. And this is typical for the tutorials that you see online. A lot of people do it this way. And it's pretty good out of the box, but I'm going to show you what I don't like about it. When you hit play and you move, when you turn the opposite direction, the character turns their back towards the camera. It's not a big deal. It's really not. It doesn't even really matter in the grand scheme of things, but I don't like it. So, a way to fix that is to go into your camera boom and put this at 90 degrees. You think, oh, yeah, makes sense. So this is going to get weird. So I moved it, and now we're going to hit play. Well, my whole level is built for a camera on the opposite side, so let's exit this and let's move this to the other side. Good enough. All right, so now the wall's been moved to the other side, and now I can hit play. Look at that. Now the camera is still on the right side of the player. Now what's weird though is that the controls are inverted. The controls are actually the same as they were before, it's just the camera's been inverted. But now, when I turn, the character faces the camera, which is one step closer to what we wanted. So now what you can do is you can go here into your character blueprint and go to your event graph. And remember how we set this world direction as 1? Well, now what we want to do is invert it and put it at -1. All right, we're going to compile and save. And now, everything is as it should be. The controls are no longer inverted. The character is turning towards the camera the way that they should be. All this stuff, right? Now, you might be thinking, well, when you hit play, the character's facing in the wrong direction. Well, are they? Because I can easily just move this over here and build it going in the opposite direction, build my level going in the opposite direction than what it is when I started it, and now it's exactly how it should be. So that's a pretty simple way of fixing that problem if it bothers you enough to fix it. Like I said before, it's not that big of a deal that the character turns away, it's just not my preference. I would rather the idle or half turn, you see the front of the character, or when you're turning around, you see the front of the character. So hopefully that was informational, educational, entertaining. I don't know. That's all I got for right now, guys. We'll see you in the next one, all right? Cheers.